At the Sports History Network, we're proud to introduce you to a new sponsor for our podcasts. It's Home Field Apparel, your premium collegiate apparel brand right out of Indianapolis. They've got incredibly comfortable t-shirts, plus they're officially licensed with vintage college designs. They have over 150 plus colleges available now and always adding more. Homefield digs through the archives and history of your school to find unique logos, mascots, and moments to make thoughtful designs for your school. When you shop today, new customers can get a 15% discount off their first purchase using the promo code SPORTSHISTORY at checkout. You can learn more at homefieldapparel.com.
One of the more interesting subjects of football history is the evolution of the equipment of the players wore. We have Timothy Brown, the great historian and author, joining us to talk about the history of some equipment, including the shoulder pad, coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pigpen, your portal to positive football history. And it's Tuesday, and it's time to go on another archaeological dig. We're going to join our friend Timothy Brown, the great historian and author, website guy. He's just bringing up the tidbits of football history each and every day. Tim Brown, welcome back to the Pigpen.
Hey, Darren. Thank you for having me back. Appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you coming on here. You're one of the hardest workers and digging up history, around, because we said recently, you are the Indiana Jones of the gridiron. So I think we're going to keep that moniker on you. I think it's very befitting.
Keep digging.
Just don't let a giant stone roll down on a booby trap and crush you. So we got to.
Not a chance.
So. Tim, we have you have a couple different tidbits that I've read recently over the last few months, and they have to do with some of the player equipment back in the early days of football. I guess sort of early 20th century, and a lot of them deal with the shoulder pads. And we were hoping maybe you could tell us a little bit about the equipment and the shoulder pads in particular today.
Yeah, sure. So this is one where I really would recommend, if your listeners do not typically, if they don't normally go to football archaeology, this is one where it really would be helpful to actually see the images. So just encourage you to go to footballarchaeology.com. There's a little search function, little magnifying glass about the center of the page. Just type in shoulder pads and you'll quickly, it'll pull up, a couple of these articles. But so the long and short of it was like, when football first got started and was moving away from rugby, no one padded up, just like rugby players don't pad up today. But as the game became moved away from the free flowing, sweeping rugby style and moved to the mass formation, mass and momentum plays, the game just got a lot rougher. And so it was in about 1990 when they first started wearing nose guards, and they started wearing kind of head harnesses, but different ways to protect their ears. And then it was in 1995, this is the earliest instance I've found of anybody mentioning shoulder pads, and that came in a Yale game versus Orange AC, or the Orange Athletic Club of New Jersey, and which was made up mostly of former Yale and Princeton players. So, very, very top-notch competition. But, it just mentioned that these guys who are starting to wear these, they called them enormous pads on their shoulders. So the earliest shoulder pads really were just pads. It's obvious once you realize that the name comes from just putting pads on your shoulders. And so these were cloth or leather pads. They kind of almost look like something like upholstery, but they were, stuffed with felt or horsehair or those kinds of materials. And then the pads were sewn onto the exterior of the jersey. So they sat on the shoulders. Some of the guys padded their elbows, and some padded their sternums as well.
So just to make that clear, these weren't separate apparatus that they wore under the garment. These were sewn on the top of the what we would call the jersey or the sweater that they were wearing.
That's right.
Okay.
And so if you look at period pictures from, especially by the turn of the century until you get into even 1912 or so, you'll see a lot of guys wearing with these big honking pads on their shoulders. And so, the online articles show examples of them. And one of the examples I show it's from a 1910 Minnesota high school. And every one of the guys has these enormous pads on their shoulder, and they all look like they're homemade. So there were, their grandma or the local harness maker or whatever, somebody, they're all homemade. But by, the turn of the century, Spalding and others were producing, commercial shoulder pads. And so you could buy the shoulder pad, order them from the catalog or go to a sporting goods store or hardware store, and they'd sell these pads, and then you'd sew them onto your jersey. So that was kind of how shoulder pads started. And then got early in 1904 or something in that range, Spalding put out what they called the Model D. So these were, manufactured pads that, very regimented in the look and everything. But what you actually did, you could sew the one onto the exterior of the jersey, but what a lot of people did was they wore them, they had laces where you could tie them together. So if you think about, putting on a modern set of shoulder pads, you got to put them on over your head, right? And so these pads were the same way. The front, what would be kind of the front there was laces that tied the left and the right side together, and then on the back the same thing was the case. And so you put it over your head because of it was the two sides were tied together. And then there was another set of laces that went under the armpit or through the armpit. You tied, they were tied up. So that's what kept the pads on your body. So it was basically the tying it through the armpit that kept it in place. But so that was, that's where, the whole, as we think about them today, shoulder pads going over the head and then, resting on the shoulders, that's about when that started. But I would say, still most players through the, first decade of the century, most players just wore the external pads sewn onto their jerseys. The next step was in about 1910 when Spalding came out with what they call their Model YF, but it had molded leather, so kind of harder molded leather cups that went up, to the end of your shoulders to protect those. And there were like belts or straps that connected those two pieces. And you could also get that with this pad. And, think of it as like kind of a small padded blanket, something like that, with a round hole in the middle. And so you put that over your head and you put those cups on, right? And so it kind of resembled today's shoulder pads, in kind of the overall look. And those little belts, there were like belt loops on that pad portion. And so it all kind of fit, the whole outfit kind of fit together. And with that particular piece, people started wearing those under the shoulder or under the jersey, I should say. So, it's one of those where it's hard to even know who's wearing those at times because they weren't anywhere near the size of today's shoulder pads in terms of how much they protruded, from the body, and they didn't have the multiple layers like they often do today. But one of the neat things is, a friend of mine has he has both that Model D and the Model YF. He's got examples of both of them in his collection. So I show period image on these posts. I show period images of players wearing them or the illustrations in the catalog. And I'm able to show images of this guy's, John Gianantonio, images from his collection of the actual pieces of equipment, as it exists today. So it's really a cool, it's a neat looking thing if you just, in terms of the evolution of the pads in the game of football.
Yeah, I mean, you do a great job. I do want to mention, you were mentioning earlier to the listeners to check out the site and look at the pictures. Tim has a picture with every single one of his posts that he puts out every day. Sometimes the pictures, are worth 1,000 words, and he has 100 words under it, but the pictures tell a lot. And Tim gets a lot of his information. I look at a picture and I say, oh, okay, there's a football player from, early football. Tim looks at it and he's got the shoulder pads all identified, the Model Ys and everything else. So, that's why I say he's the Indiana Jones here, and he's very astute to finding these things. He finds Waldo in the picture every time. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, and we were talking before we started recording this one about I have a post, a picture of this guy wearing that Model D pad. But he also is wearing shin guards, and, his pants are, before they made extensive use of rubber and similar kinds of pads, a lot of football pants and shin guards, the way that they offered kind of mechanical protection for the player was they used reeds or like small pieces of bamboo as the protection. So they were, if you look at old time pictures of football players, a lot of them, their thigh pads have all these straight lines in them, and the shin pads do as well. And that's just bamboo covered with canvas.
I guess you'd call it they'd be ribbed with the bamboo.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's ribbed. But the ribs are, it's just some kind of reed or bamboo. It's that
Really?
That was the best that they had. And part of it was, the rules at the time didn't allow you to use hard materials, so you could get away with bamboo, but nothing harder than that.
Interesting. Well, you did it once again, my friend. You educated. They say you learn something new every day, but you've accomplished that in a bunch of times here. I learned like 2 or 3 things here, and I think the listeners did too. So we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us each week. And folks, don't forget, you can get this wisdom each and every day, and I'll let Tim tell you how.
Yeah. So, the best way to get it is just go to footballarchaeology.com, click on, any article, and it's going to offer you the opportunity to subscribe. And if you subscribe, you'll get an email every day, some days 2, with just either a tidbit, the quick 30, 40-second article, or a long form article that maybe is, 5-10 minute read. So that's the best way to do it. Or if you prefer to, consume your media via Twitter, I post every article on Twitter as well. Find me at Football Archaeology or FOF Strife.
Okay. Well, Tim, we thank you once again, and hope to have you back here next week talking some more football.
Very good. Darren, thank you much. Look forward to next week.
We're taking a peek over at the chains and the down marker. It's 4th and long. We're going to have to punt the ball and get on out of here, but we'll have another series tomorrow for your football history headlines, so be sure to tune in. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast. Pigskindispatch.com is a proud affiliate of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of sports yesteryear.
It was just another ordinary day in the offices of the newspaper circa 1924. But for Marla Delft, assistant editor, everything was about to change. For she was about to discover the awesome attractiveness of Row 1 brand retro sports paraphernalia items thanks to Orville Mulligan, sports writer.
And there it is.
Wow, Orville, that's really the bee's knees.
Isn't it just? A poster-sized replica of the actual 1909 World Series program cover.
I can see that. But where did you get it? And where'd you get it framed?
I ordered it from the Row 1 website, where over 6,000 items of sports memorabilia from the 1880s to the 1990s are available for reproduction, in multiple sizes and in several different materials, with over a dozen styles of frame to choose from for prints like this.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Delft would love to put up more of these in the office. But I'm equally as sure they're beyond this newspaper's budget.
Not at all, my dear Marla. See for yourself. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/row1.
sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. Oh my, these are good prices. Oh, and look at this stuff. Oklahoma-Nebraska football, college basketball art, Michael Jordan items.
And so it
retro
was that
sports
Marla Delft
advertisement
discovered the
placards.
splendiferous magic of Row 1 sports memorabilia, arts, and prints. You can too by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. That's ROW1 today for access to the full Row 1 catalog of gallery prints and gifts like t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, telephone cases, coffee mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Act today for 15% discount off all prints with coupon code SHN15 and 20% off all other items with coupon code SHN20 at checkout. And keep your dial locked to the Sports History Network for the exciting chronicles of the 1920 sports world in Orville Mulligan, sports writer. Coming soon.